Um, I don't know if folks standing want to find a seat because we're going to be here for a while, but so hi again, I'm Will from Science. I'm the Director of Product Development. I'm in charge of Science Advances, our new journal, and then creating new products and kind of improving our existing products. Kind of my theme today is built around Science Advances and our experience. Product development is reasonably new to AAAS. We're actually building this out as a core competency, so we have a unique challenge. We kind of don't have an infrastructure or a process or rules or guidelines to start with or to try to change, so it's pretty exciting for us. And I'm going to use Science Advances as kind of a way of sharing my thoughts on the industry and how we think of product development, and I think some things we worry too much about. And the internet is really slow, so there's going to be a lag with images coming up on the screen. Sorry about that. But my theme is about going back to the start. You know, product development doesn't require technical brilliance. It doesn't require catching fire or big data. I think we think too much or we worry too much about disruption or innovation and producing products that are both future perfect and permanent, that when we put it out there, we can't change things. And that's just not a great model for product development writ large. And I think product development is really about execution, and execution is all about getting the basic things right. So here's that lag. If we had great high-speed internet, you'd see the very first issue of Science, which was published in 1883. And Science is a pretty venerable brand. We've been around for a really long time, and as our old CEO who just left told me when I started, we can't fudge it up. And next to it would be a picture of Thomas Edison. And Science actually got some financial support from Thomas Edison, I think around our third year when we were on not solid financial footing. And there's a great lesson from Thomas Edison for product development, and that is he took 2,700 attempts to create a manufacturable light bulb. That's an awful lot. That's years and teams in multiple laboratories. It wasn't a one-and-done proposition, and I think when we think about new journals, we think about that. But I'm going to start my story, which isn't advancing at all. There we go, with where I started. And this is the Peabody Library in Baltimore. It's one of my favorite libraries that I've ever been in. And I started in publishing in 2002 at Lippincott, Williams & Wilkins. And if you want to say, in my early career, if I'm out of it, every conference I went to, kind of every meeting that I was in, we were talking about the end times. You know, we were talking about how we needed to disrupt or die, that print was going away, that open access was going to lay waste to our P&Ls, and that the world basically was falling apart. Well, now, 15 years later, and I'm heading up product development, that entire notion is wrong. Print is still 40% of our revenue streams. Open access hasn't decimated our P&Ls, it's added to our coffers. So what are we worried about? And I think we worry too much, or maybe we don't worry about the right things. And I think if we, sorry, this is the great technology lag. If we spend as much time worrying about, say, search engine optimization as we did open access, if we thought about metadata and linking, I think we'd be far better off in wrapping our heads around Google and what the future of publishing looks like than if we spent a lot of time worrying about open access and what it could mean. And you know, I love Leon. I really do. There was a great Scholarly Kitchen post on this New York Times article he wrote called Among the Disrupted. And I think many of us think product development has to happen on a plus scale, and that if we aren't throwing a game-changing Hail Mary, we shouldn't even bother. And I just don't think that's right. And this is what I get for trying to be fancy. So this is my point. When I was interviewing for a job not at Science a few years ago, the hiring manager made this great point that stuck with me ever since, and that publishing isn't rocket science. You know, success in product development, particularly in our complex market that has slowed down, that has so many intertwined pieces, is iterative, and it needs to be incremental, which is one of the fundamental lessons we need to draw from what we publish to apply to our business. Someone spoke earlier today, and I caught a tweet, which was, we don't have a systems overview to the scholarly industry, but we understand component parts, and we haven't pieced it together. And I think what that means is we have to experiment. We have to start small. We have to be prepared to test things out, and we have to be prepared to fail. So where to start? And this is where we're starting at AAAS. Start with the mission. So our mission is to advance things I should really know, is to advance science to serve society, and part of that is improving scientific communication. We take that really seriously with science, and we thought about that quite a bit when we figured out the editorial and business model for Science Advances. We then stopped and we thought about our brand strength. Why do people join AAAS? Why do people subscribe to our journals? And one of the things we found was that people come to us because we are a trusted resource, and we usually present things in an interdisciplinary perspective. And that seems to be something that AAAS is positioned well to do, unlike other publishers. We then started to take an inventory, and we're still doing that now. What roles and resources and unique skills do we have? As a nonprofit, we have our publishing arm, and then we have a whole other side of the house that's been doing really great and exciting things supported by soft money. And we're finding that there's a lot of hidden gems there. There are things that could be a phenomenal product in the market. We have one in particular that already has 80,000 active users, and we've been giving it away for free, and we got grant money to build it. So there's potential there. We just had to stop and look. And then we have to think really hard about our competition. And if we think about open access in particular, open access, the market was growing in double digits, somewhere between 35 and 40% for several years, but the growth has slowed down. And there's a lot more open access journals now than there even were 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So if you launch an open access journal, you're going into a very crowded space that is growing slower. And I think you have to decide, what is your threshold? So, I think are adopting something like the GE mentality, which is if we can't be number 1 or number 2 in an area, we probably shouldn't be going into it. This is a diagram we have that talks about how we align our product development activities with our portfolio. So obviously we have Science, our flagship. We have our portfolio journals, which are Science Advances, Science Signaling, Science Translational Medicine. Underneath that, we have news and AAAS resources, which reach a much wider audience. Underneath that, we have author, member, reader tools and services. And under that, we have kind of our blue ocean space, where we think we can reach new audiences and markets. And we're spending some time thinking about each one of these segments, because there's opportunities, I think, everywhere. We don't want to focus just on improving the journals we have, because creating a new app or a new widget could potentially deliver as much value to our members, introduce us to new audiences or readers, or potentially create more revenue than things that we could do with science itself. So the hint is to look at anything and everything. There's a lag again. So the next slide shows actually our product development process, and it's very similar to the model that Kara showed, and it's an adaptation of the StageGate model. And what's important here is that we form cross-department teams, and these teams really don't think about their department or a very specific product. They're focused on very quickly coming up with ideas, testing them, deciding whether or not to move forward or not. And we've broken it down into 2 parts, which are seeking truth, where it is all about the idea and loyalty to creating the right test, and then seeking success, which is where we start worrying about things like dollars and market sizing and some of the business fundamentals. And we chose to frame it this way because in a very large nonprofit organization, you have people whose eyes glaze over as soon as you start talking about agile product development or profit and loss statements. So we thought it was important to boil it down into very simple terms, things of truth and success. We can all relate to that. So I'm going to share 3 tips from when we launched Advances. And that first is that product development really has to be an organizational competency. And if you haven't done it before, there is most certainly going to be friction. We are all going to have different terminology, different ways of thinking about things. There'll be issues around alignment and resourcing, and this is actually the schedule leading up to the launch of Science Advances, and you can see how many dates we've crossed out. The important thing to note is that there will be friction, and you have to have good communication and good relationships with your colleagues to work through things. The second tip I have, and now nothing is working, so, and this is a big one for me, is that you can win on basics. the most successful products I've launched weren't some gigantic big innovation. It was publishing things faster, finding a way to be a little bit cheaper. My favorite journal that I ever launched was really successful because we published single study papers that went through no more than 2 rounds of revision, and the biggest kind of mega journal out there with a high impact factor only published 4 or 5 study papers, and papers often went through 3 review cycles. And the new journal just took off because it really focused on authors and their needs. And my last tip, and this is a really scary picture and it still haunts me when it comes up, you'll see it, is that project management is crucial. Ken Anderson, who's my boss, wrote a great scholarly kitchen post on the importance of project management, and I'm a believer. So this scary diagram is the dependency map, all the tasks that we needed to go through to launch Science Advances, and that diagram is terrifying. And usually with projects, you'll see the critical path, which would be, you would hope, this really linear line of red tasks that you have to get through. And as you can see, there wasn't. And if you don't have good project management skills, there are people out there who can help you. Because you need to be able to distill these very complex things into bite-sized chunks and move through them step by step. So I'll end with these last 2 slides on advances. My organization spent, I think, about 5-6 years thinking about launching an open access journal, what that would mean, and then we attempted to launch it in 8 months, which was terrifying. And I keep my hair short now because I have way too much gray hair. Our innovation, and I think where we will hopefully find our product development success, was finding a middle road. So we know largely in the market there are 2 kinds of successful open access journals. There's the model where you publish a great volume at a moderate APC, and then there's another successful model where you publish a few articles at a really high APC. Well, that didn't necessarily work for our members and the broad disciplinary scope we wanted to serve. So we're trying to find a way that we can charge a moderate amount with a pricing scheme that allows a lot of authors to contribute and to participate. We believe very fundamentally that we need to publish quality content, we need to contribute more signal than noise, and that we really need to focus on editorial quality and author services. And we do that through licensing options, what we offer in the production process, and kind of in our editorial approach. So it is still really early days for advances, but these are our other big goals. In laying out the journal and our product development process, we needed to create a grounds for experimentation. So you can't exactly test new things out on science. It has a tremendous inertia and a tremendous history. So we needed essentially a sandbox, an area that we could go play. We feel really strongly, and this is from our mission perspective, that there's actually harm in introducing new business models that don't contribute to the value of scientific communication and perpetuating what we think are unviable business models and potentially ones that even detract from funding of basic research. That's very big for us. And that we wanted a product that enhances our brand. And hopefully you'll see me from a year from now and I'll be able to tell you we checked all of these things off, but time will tell. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.